Years after peace had settled over the wizarding world, Harry Potter, now a quiet, watchful figure in the ministry, found himself pulled once more toward darkness when a hidden chamber beneath Hogwarts was unearthed during renovations, revealing a forgotten prophecy etched in ancient runes. The heir of shadows shall rise when the wandless moon falls. At first dismissed as an echo of old magic, things changed when portraits in the castle began to vanish from their frames, leaving behind only blackened glass. And strange, silent students began wandering the halls in trances, whispering in a language even Hermione couldn't translate. With Ron by his side and his own son, Albus, now a skilled legilimens, Harry returned to Hogwarts, following clues left behind by Salazar Slytherin himself, until they uncovered an ancient spirit, Morgan Gaunt, a forgotten cousin of Voldemort, bound in a shadowy relic buried deep beneath the lake. In a final confrontation within the flooded chamber, Harry faced the spirit not with power, but with compassion, offering her the one thing she had never known, mercy. And with a scream that shook the stones of the castle, the shadow dissolved. Hogwarts was safe again, for now, but as Harry stood in the fading light of the chamber, he couldn't shake the feeling that magic, like history, never stays buried for long. Though the spirit of Morgan Gaunt had been vanquished, something remained, a trace of her magic embedded deep in the castle's foundation, like a whisper trapped in stone. Over the following weeks, Hogwarts itself began to change. Staircases moved not just whimsically, but violently. Doors sealed themselves without reason, and rooms disappeared entirely from the map. Albus Potter, determined to uncover the truth and shake free of his father's shadow, began investigating with Scorpius Malfoy, following threads of forgotten magic through dreamlike corridors that had never existed before, rooms that seemed to remember them, or perhaps wait for them. In one such space, a room lit only by a floating orb of silver mist, they discovered a diary not written in ink, but in blood, pulsing softly when touched. It belonged to a girl named Helena Morgan, born in secret in the final days of the First Wizarding War, Voldemort's niece, raised by magic alone, a sorceress without a wand, but wielding power through raw will. Her diary spoke of the wandless moon, a celestial convergence when ancient magic would rise unbidden, and the walls between life and death would weaken. As the moon grew closer, the veil in the Department of Mysteries began to hum, and Harry, haunted by dreams of voices calling from beyond, realized that the war had never truly ended, only paused. This was no longer about bloodlines or revenge. It was about magic itself, reshaping the world in the image of its forgotten heirs. With time unraveling and shadows spreading, Harry, Albus, and their friends would have to race against a tide of unraveling enchantments, discovering that the greatest threat to the wizarding world wasn't darkness at all, but magic that no longer wished to be controlled. As the wandless moon, now Minister for Magic, its silver convened an emergency council with magical scholars and seers from across the magical world, and all gave the same warning: ways magic was evolving. Owls lost their sense of direction. In the heart of Time Turner's malfunction, and Scorpius spells cast in daylight lingered the shadowed memories of Hogwarts, uncovering relics left behind by Helena Morgan, half child, half curse, who had been imprisoned not by chains, but by enchantments so ancient even Dumbledore had feared to touch them. Meanwhile, Harry, drawn into increasingly lucid visions, found himself face to face within the dream realm with figures long dead: Dobby, Sirius, even Snape, all warning him not to trust the pull of the veil, for it no longer led only to the dead. When a magical storm split open the lake and revealed a black spire buried beneath its depths, a tower older than the school itself, Hogwarts was evacuated, and the castle sealed for the first time in history. But Albus refused to leave, driven by the diary's final entry. The key to unmaking lies where the world was made. He and Scorpius entered the spire and vanished without a trace. As magical weather tore across Britain and the Ministry lost all contact with its northern outposts, Harry, Ron, and Hermione realized that this was no longer a question of stopping an enemy, but understanding a truth buried beneath centuries of wizards' pride, that magic was not theirs to command, but a living thing, and it was waking up angry. The descent into the Black Spire was unlike anything Harry, Ron, or Hermione had ever faced. Here, beneath the bedrock of the world, the rules of magic twisted like smoke. Staircases led nowhere, corridors folded in on themselves, and doorways opened to memories not their own. Within its depths, time was not linear. The trio witnessed flickers of their past. Ron as a boy playing chess in the Gryffindor common room, Hermione in the library trembling as she first read about Horcruxes, and Harry, over and over again, standing at the mirror of Ariste, watching his parents fade. The deeper they went, the more the spire resisted them, alive and ancient, built not by wizards but by something older. Primordial magic, the kind spoken of only in myth, before wands and spells were shaped into language. They found Albus and Scorpius at the base of the tower, standing before a massive, floating crystal, dark, cracked, and pulsing like a heart. It was the Well of Origin, the place where magic first entered the world, and it was failing. Alara Morgan, now only partly human, stood at its edge, her body flickering between flesh and shadow, whispering in voices that did not belong to her alone. She was not the villain they had imagined. She was its vessel, chosen by the well itself to act as a bridge between the old magic and the new. Magic was never meant to be wielded, she said, her voice echoing with centuries. It was meant to be heard, and you silenced it. With every spell cast, every charm forced, every wand snapped in punishment, wizardkind had chained the raw force of creation. The well was breaking free. If it collapsed entirely, magic would surge unbound, rewriting reality without care for life or death, past or future. In a moment of chilling clarity, Hermione realized this wasn't a battle they could win, not with force, nor even cleverness, but through surrender. To restore balance, someone had to remain in the spire, to listen, endlessly, to the well's voice. A magical custodian, not a master. Alara was dying, her form unable to contain the burden. Albus stepped forward, ready to offer himself, but Harry stopped him, his heart torn between destiny and fatherhood. And then, Ron, quietly, simply, offered himself instead. "I've had my time," he said, smiling sadly. "Let me do this for you, for everyone." And with a final embrace, he stepped into the light of the well and was gone. The tower calmed, the magic settled. Hogwarts slowly healed, but a silence would forever echo through the wizarding world, a reminder that true power was not in spells or victories, but in understanding when to let go. Harry stood on the cliffs above the lake one last time, wind in his graying hair, and whispered into the breeze, "Thank you, Ron." And far below, in the heart of the earth, where magic began, someone listened. Years passed, and the world did not forget. Near the edge of the Black Lake stood a quiet monument of smooth stone, humming faintly with ancient energy. Etched simply were the words, "Ronald Bilious Weasley, listener of the deep." Magic had changed since the Black Spire calmed. Wand work grew gentler, responding more to emotion than command. Even the proudest wizards found their power unreliable unless approached with humility. Hogwarts transformed too. Its staircases moved with purpose rather than mischief, and the Forbidden Forest felt less dark, more watchful. A new branch of magical study, sympathetic thaumaturgy, emerged, focused on understanding magic instead of controlling it. At its head stood Albus Potter, tempered by the Spire's secrets, who became both scholar and guardian of the old ways. Scorpius Malfoy worked beside him, decoding the fragments of Alara Morgan's diary, now sacred for revealing magic's living nature. Hermione often visited the spire, sitting in silence, wondering if Ron still listened from within the well. Harry, scarred but at peace, lived quietly near Hogsmeade, tending magical plants and watching over his grandchildren, his wand rarely drawn but always near. Sometimes, in the wind or when the lake was still, he thought he heard laughter, Ron's unmistakable, goofy laugh, echoing beneath the earth. He smiled, knowing the world had been saved not by spells or prophecies, but by a man who chose to listen when no one else would. In that quiet, the wizarding world found a new magic, rooted not in power, but in respect for mystery, history, and the eternal voice of magic itself, older than any of them, and destined to remain long after.